Keir Starmer's significant risk, to halt Nigel Farage's ascent to No 10 as reform undermines Labour's red wall. Sir Keir Starmer's significant risk to counter Nigel Farage could potentially turn into an electoral masterstroke if Labour manages to attract anti-reform voters before the 2029 elections, according to GB News. Hello viewers, welcome to UK Pancakes. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe and click the notifications bell so you don't miss any insights about UK elites. The Prime Minister, still reeling from a loss in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election on May 1st, seemed to introduce a new strategy to confront Farage earlier this month. After GB News reported that Labour's initial three-pronged approach against Farage was likely to fail, the People's Channel has learned that a negative campaign aimed at curbing reform's influence could regain left-leaning support ahead of the next general election. In a meeting with concerned Labour MPs following his controversial Island of Strangers speech on migration, the Prime Minister acknowledged, "The Conservatives are not our main opponent. Reform is our primary rival for power." He further stated, "We will take the fight to him. We will confront him as Labour." Labour insiders have indicated that this messaging aims to consolidate left-leaning anti-Farage support at a time when disillusioned voters are turning to both the Liberal Democrats and the Green Party. A seasoned Labour campaigner told GB News, "Positioning the next election as Labour versus Reform could be a stroke of strategic genius. Farage may be grabbing headlines, but when voters are asked to envision him actually governing, the sentiment changes quickly. He's still a divisive figure, entertaining in small doses, but not someone most voters would want in charge." Starmer, while not particularly exciting, is increasingly viewed as the reliable choice that working men's clubs would trust to manage things after closing time. GB News also reports that Labour strategists were hoping a Stop Farage coalition could have averted Reform's narrow 6-vote win in Runcorn. It's a significant risk to rely on enough people showing up to stop Farage, as the turnout wasn't sufficient in Runcorn, and it didn't stop Brexit either, a Labour source from the Red Wall commented. Starmer's shift towards acknowledging Reform's rise came shortly after a significant wave of support for the party in the 2025 local elections. Although most of its gains came at the expense of the Conservatives, notable wins in Durham, Doncaster, and Hull and East Yorkshire left Starmer facing backlash from voters across the Red Wall. Current opinion polls indicate that Reform is gaining substantial double-digit leads over Labour, enhancing Farage's chances of becoming the next Prime Minister of the UK. A closer examination of the polls reveals troubling signs for Starmer's fragile electoral coalition. YouGov's latest survey shows that only 60% of Labour voters from 2024 still intend to support Starmer, with 15% shifting to Reform, 12% to the Liberal Democrats, and 9% now favouring the Green Party. YouGov's findings revealed that Farage was unable to win against any of his leadership opponents in direct matchups. He lagged behind Starmer by 15 points, with the Clecton MP only slightly ahead of the Prime Minister among Tory voters for 2024 by 11%, while he garnered minimal support from Liberal Democrat and Green Party supporters. Polling expert James Johnson from JL Partners suggested that Starmer's strategy to position Farage as his primary opponent in the upcoming general election could attract voters from the Liberal Democrats and Greens. He explained to GB News that if Starmer frames the election as a contest between himself and Farage, left-leaning voters are more likely to vote tactically for Labour, fearing Farage more than Kemi Badenoch. Johnson noted that when asked who would make a better Prime Minister between Starmer and Badenoch, Starmer's ratings were lower than when compared to Farage. He emphasised that framing the election as a binary choice between the two could solidify support for Labour on the left, which is significant in all areas. This dynamic could benefit Labour against both the Tories and Farage, especially as the right remains divided. However, a friend of Farage expressed scepticism about Labour's focus on targeting the leader of Reform UK, calling it a desperate move. They pointed out that people are familiar with Farage and indifferent to him, while Starmer remains largely unknown, which is more concerning. Reform UK chairman Zia Youssef dismissed YouGov's head-to-head polling as moronic, arguing that it has little relevance for actual electoral outcomes. He claimed that more Britons view Nigel positively compared to any other leader, and that reform leads in national polls. Labour MPs in the Red Wall are becoming increasingly anxious about the possibility of losing seats to Reform UK. Although Reform only secured 5 seats in the 2024 general election, all at the expense of the Tories, they finished second in 98 other constituencies, with Labour winning 89 of those. Current opinion polls suggest that prominent Labour figures, including Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and Home Secretary Yvette Cooper, could be at risk of losing their positions. Farage is not only challenging Labour electorally in the Red Wall but is also positioning his populist party's policies against Labour's. He has distanced himself from Thatcherism and is promising to reverse Starmer's cuts to winter fuel payments, nationalise British Steel, and eliminate the 2-child benefit cap. Just days after the Prime Minister seemed to move closer to a televised debate with Farage, the leader of Reform UK challenged him to a direct confrontation at a working men's club. At a press conference in London, Farage criticised Starmer as unpatriotic and suggested that the Prime Minister is absolutely terrified of his People's Army. "They've decided to target me," Farage stated. During every PMQs, we see an obscure Labour backbencher ask, "Is it true that the Honourable Member for Clacton is a complete rutter?" To which the Prime Minister responds, "Well, of course, he supports Putin and wants to abolish the NHS. I have to sit there without any way to respond or defend myself." Farage also dismissed any threat from the Conservatives, claiming it was completely irrelevant whether Robert Jenrick or Boris Johnson took over from Kemi Badenoch as leader of the opposition, adding, "They've had a good run for 200 years, but it's over now." However, a supporter of Farage acknowledged, "They are not done yet, but it's looking that way." Source from the Red Wall Labour faction warned Starmer that he must demonstrate he is making a tangible difference to voters if he hopes to counter Farage's influence. The best hope for Labour is that the benefits of their policies materialise just before the election, they said. Instead, Labour has chosen to attack Farage based on his background, particularly his attendance at the prestigious Dulwich College. Similar criticisms were directed at Farage when UKIP gained popularity in the early 2010s. Starmer has also decided to add a fourth focus to his criticisms regarding the NHS, Ukraine, and workers' rights, the economy. The Prime Minister travelled to the north-west of England after a new Merlin strategy poll indicated that his 17% lead in the Red Wall has shrunk to a 7-point advantage for Reform. Targeting Farage's economic proposals, Starmer remarked, "In opposition, we warned that Liz Truss would ruin the economy and leave you to deal with the consequences. We were right, and we were elected to fix that mess. Now in government, we are once again facing the same fantasy, this time from Nigel Farage. Farage is making the same gamble Liz Truss did, believing you can spend tens of billions on tax cuts without a solid plan for funding it. And just like Truss, he is using your family finances, your mortgage, your bills as a gamble in his reckless experiment. The outcome will be the same." In response, Farage told The Sun, "In the last 24 hours, I have faced political attacks from everyone, including Keir Starmer and John Swinney, because Reform UK is gaining ground. The Prime Minister is now resorting to dirty tactics borrowed from the 2016 referendum campaign. This is Project Fear 2.0. Yusuf also suggested that Starmer's attacks on Farage indicate that the Prime Minister is panicking. He stated, "This terrible government is lagging behind Reform by an astonishing 8 points in the latest YouGov poll. We discuss economic credibility. This government promised £10 billion in increased spending in their manifesto last June. In their actual budget, just 3 months later, they raised spending by £60 billion and magically discovered an additional £30 billion to give away sovereign territory, specifically the Chagos Islands." Nigel Farage cautioned Sir Keir Starmer against jeopardising a potential trade deal with the US by aligning more closely with the EU. The Prime Minister is set to meet European leaders in Brussels tomorrow as part of his Brexit reset. However, the leader of Reform UK emphasised that Sir Keir should focus on America rather than the EU, especially with Donald Trump returning to the White House. When asked what Sir Keir should communicate to European leaders, Mr. Farage told the Daily Express, Get yourselves organized and abandon this absurd notion of the European Union. But he won't do that. He aims to bring us back closer to a group of failing economies and political institutions, with parties being elected across Europe that Starmer opposes, and who knows what will happen in the upcoming elections in Germany. My main message to Starmer is to avoid getting us too closely tied to the EU, as it could harm our chances of securing a trade deal with America. Sir Keir will participate in an informal retreat with European Council leaders in Belgium ahead of a UK-EU summit later this year. He will be the first British Prime Minister since Brexit to dine with leaders from the EU. The meeting is expected to focus on defence cooperation. The Prime Minister, who supported remaining in the EU, has assured that he will not pursue rejoining the single market or customs union. However, the government has not ruled out the possibility of joining a continent-wide trade agreement known as the Pan-Euro-Mediterranean (PEM) Convention. Farage is strategically positioning himself to attract working-class votes, encroaching on territory that is uncomfortable for Starmer. How would they fund it? The party suggests a mix of closing asylum hotels, reducing aid, and eliminating net-zero targets. The advantage of not being in power is that they don't have to make all the numbers add up right now, and this attention-grabbing announcement will at least revive discussions about the two-child cap. Regarding the Conservatives, who implemented the measure in 2017, leader Kemi Badenoch is clear. If you can't afford to have many children, then you shouldn't. Thus, there is a significant divide between the Conservatives and Reform, but Farage is currently targeting the Prime Minister and his party, while Labour's position remains uncertain. Deputy Leader Angela Rayner stated on Sunday morning with Trevor Phillips that removing any measures that help reduce poverty is not a bad idea. With the spending review coming up, Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves will be assessing the true cost, not just the political implications, of reversing the cuts to winter fuel payments. However, will the frustration that this policy caused among certain Labour MPs stop here? Or will it shift to another sensitive topic? As one MP expressed, if there are funds for pensioners, why not for children? Thanks for watching till the end. Drop your thoughts in the comments section. We hope to see you in our next UK Pancakes.